Walcott, who can run away from them. Blind trying to buy him a bit of time. Ozil, two!
This is Barkley, away from Otamendi. He's got two runners to his left and one to his right. Barkley wants to go alone, and why not?
Manchester City are still alive here. Balotelli, Aguero!
Hello and welcome to the Football Hipsters English Breakfast Special Midweek Edition. There's a mouthful for you. I am your host Chris, and I'm joined by my regular compadre, and that is Ross. Good evening, Ross.
Good evening.
And making his breakfast debut at very short notice, it's Mr. Tom Canton. Evening, Tom.
Does it work that I've got digested biscuits as my breakfast? That works, doesn't it?
I think
I
it
have
does
Jaffa
work.
cakes, so.
Oh, but they're not biscuits though.
Well, no, but.
However,
tomato.
However, I only an hour and a half ago ate, and this is the tin here. Hear that noise? I ate a tin of ruby red grapefruit in light syrup. So there you go.
You decide, fans, who's got the best
Who's
breakfast.
got the best breakfast? Tweet us, let us know. Right, I'm sure that's not why people are tuning in, so let's get to the football, shall we? We're going to whip through as fast as we can the midweek action. There's a full Premier League midweek selection of games to run through, so we thought we'd keep our loyal listeners up to speed with what we think is going on, and my goodness me, was it ever a midweek? Lots of things to talk about. We're going to go in reverse order then, chaps, so we'll start with today being Wednesday. Of course, when you listen to this, it could be the day after, but we'll start with Wednesday's action, and we will start with the Arsenal-Swansea game. Now, this is going to be painful for you and I, Tom, because we're not very far short of just coming off the back of discussing this. So I'm going to ask Ross's opinion first of all. Now, Ross, you made a statement on the last breakfast pod, which indeed you tweeted us tonight and said that the defeat against United was a cut, not a tear. Defeat to Swansea is definitely a tear. So, what's your thoughts on tonight's Arsenal performance?
I didn't see it, I have to admit, but it sounds like it was one of the worst Arsenal performances, perhaps this season. It's like I said, the defeat to United was a cut. That was something that you could get over if you rebounded quickly enough. Swansea is a tear. That's something that's going to be very painful and very hard to deal with, especially going into a big game like you've got on Saturday. I'm not saying Arsenal are out of it now, but I am saying that that's a big result. That is one of the results that you could look back to at the end of the season and say that's where it turned. But you've still got plenty of time, still plenty of points to play for, and I still firmly believe that Leicester will start to drop away. Tottenham still run the risk of running out of steam. I don't think it's doom and gloom for Arsenal, but that's a big and bad result for them tonight.
Yeah, it really, really is. And Tom, obviously yourself, myself, John, Drew, we're all Gooners, Danny as well. We've kind of I wouldn't say we've thrown the towel in, because most people know I'm always the positive one, but I mean we're realistic, aren't we, mate? We realise that the Arsenal put out a performance that was, I didn't think it was that bad a performance, but naive mistakes, poor finishing, cost them again, and surely that the gap is too big now.
It's difficult, isn't it? Especially when you're looking at it from an Arsenal fan. But obviously we've got Ross who describes it as a tear, and it is. I think that the only gratitude you can take from it is West Ham beating Spurs and Leicester, drawing with West Brom, which I'm sure we'll come on to in more depth later on. But those results, and City losing as well. So you got those results to compound the fact that we really could have taken advantage as an Arsenal fan speaking tonight. But it's disappointing for the club, and I think that you really could tell with the reaction they had to certain decisions that were made during the match, that not all is well at Arsenal, and going into the game they have at the weekend, it's going to be very, very hostile.
Yeah, apparently booing went on for a number of minutes or periods of time after the game finished. So yeah, that is tough. Ross, I just want to ask you one other thing on Arsenal as a complete, objective person on this argument. From your opinion, particularly from a club that you support that is fairly well run, from what I can gather, do you think Arsenal now need to be looking at wholesale changes, whether that be the manager, the playing staff, even at board level? Do you think serious surgery has to be made now, or do you put this down to just Arsenal kind of Arsenaling it again?
I think that's a conversation for the end of the season, because I know Paul Merson was saying for Sky this week that if if Arsenal don't win the league and Leicester or Spurs do, then Arsene Wenger has to go because of some of the comments he's made about the team being ready and how they can win this league and whatever else. For right now, I think there's too many variables. We know what this season's been like. 6 points still isn't a colossal gap. It can still be made up. There's still plenty of points that will be won and lost between all three of the teams in the title race. So I'm not convinced as of yet we need to be getting out the placards for Wenger out and rebranding some of the players as useless and they need to move on and this kind of stuff. I think, realistically speaking, you have to take stock of this whole season and then go from there, because it's very easy after a defeat like this to get caught up in the storm and say, well, everything needs to change. As I found out over the winter, when Southampton went on that 10-game run without a win, suddenly the Twitter sphere was telling me that the whole team had to go. We didn't do this good enough, didn't do that well enough. You just need to take stock. When it's going well, it's very easy to say, no need to change, we're doing okay. When it's going badly, it's very easy to say, everything needs to change from every single level. Let's just see where Arsenal end, and then we'll talk about it at the end of the season, I think.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on that one. Totally with you. I think if change is going to happen, the end of the season is the time to do it. Certainly not when you're still theoretically in a title race, however slim the chances may be. So well said. I agree with you. Let's move on to the title challenges then. We'll go across London to West Ham. I kind of saw this coming, I have to say. West Ham are very, very decent at home. It's their final season at the Bowling Ground. They would have wanted to go out with a victory over Spurs. And I think only Arsenal fans hate Spurs fans more than West Ham fans. Tom, what do you make of this? Another goal for Mikel Antonio. I'm not sure if he did the Homer Simpson celebration or not this time, but nevertheless, a winning goal for Antonio. Really big points for West Ham. They're slowly creeping up this Premier League table. They're up to 6, and they're only a point behind Manchester City in 4th now. So who is this a bigger result for, West Ham or a bigger defeat for Spurs?
I think it's a bigger defeat for Spurs, if I'm honest. I think because they've been on such a high with the streak they've been on. I think they're on a 6-game winning streak. So to lose to West Ham, which is a team which there's a bit of history between the two teams as well. What will be painful for the fans, sorry. But I think that the fans will take gratitude from the as I've said, with the Arsenal fans not being able to take advantage of results. Well, the Spurs will take solitude in the fact that teams around them also lost. So they're probably a bit of a few moment for them. But for West Ham, it's interesting to see them climb above the table. I mean, they're now just 1 point of Manchester United, and they've really opened a 4-point gap up now between them and Stoke. So that Europa League spot is also going to be important, with looking like it depends who wins the FA Cup. If that Europa League spot will go to the 6th place again. So for them, getting into Europe's a big thing, and hopefully if they do that, they can make more of an effort at go at it than they did at the start of this season.
Yes, it's definitely seemed like a pivotal result. I must confess I've not seen the highlights yet, but the atmosphere was something to behold, from what I'm reliably informed by a West Ham friend of mine. Ross, what do you think, West Ham? We talked about your Southampton guys. We've talked about Manchester United, Manchester City. West Ham, I mean, they're right on the edge now, aren't they? Do you think that they could build on this and maybe even make a charge for that 4th spot, or even higher maybe?
Absolutely sure they could get into Europe. I've felt that for most of the season. It's just, as I've said quite regularly on this pod now, is that they just seem to slip up against the small teams. The big teams they always turn up against, and much like you, I had a feeling they'd give Tottenham a run for their money today. But it's the rebound games. I'm not sure who they've got next off the top of my head. A quick look will probably inform me. Everton. See, that's one of those banana skin games for West Ham that they could very easily go in, lose 2-0, and it's so flip-floppy this season that 1 week they're fantastic and the next they're mediocre. That 5-point gap over Stoke closes very rapidly. The point they've got over Man City, that could close very rapidly as well. They could find themselves above them. It's a strange team for me this season, West Ham, because every time they go to a big team, I think they can get something, but then they play a game that I think they're going to win, and for some reason they don't turn up.
Yeah, as you quite rightly say, that Everton game is it's got the look of quite a big fixture for them, and they are away from home. Although arguably they played better away than they have at home. So big test that. That's at 3:00 on Saturday. We'll cover the other fixtures in a moment.
If I just make a quick point though,
yeah.
Antonio scoring again. I really didn't think he'd make the step up that he has done from playing in Nottingham Forest, obviously in a team which weren't great last season, and into the West Ham side. And it did take him a bit to get involved more, but he's really hit his form now, and he's going to be a huge player for them going forwards.
Russ, you're a Championship expert. Did you see that come in?
No, I thought he'd found his niche in the Championship. I have to be honest. I thought he'd go up with a Nottingham Forest and then he'd learn the Premier League. When West Ham bought him, I thought it was for the English quota. I didn't think it was for any other reason than that. But I think he broke into the squad because of Payet's injury, and he's really made that role his own so far. I'm not going to get on a Antonio for England bandwagon or anything, but he's certainly been very good, and he's done a lot better than I thought he would so far.
Yep, well said, well said. Let's move on to another challenger then, and that is, of course, Manchester City. Now, don't worry, fans, we haven't forgotten Leicester there. They were Tuesday. We'll come on to them in a minute. But Manchester City, fresh off the back of a Capital One Cup victory over today's opponents, Liverpool, they went to Anfield, and sticking with you, Ross, what happened? I mean, they lost 3-0. Could have been more. A lovely team goal, has to be said for Firmino, the third goal in particular. But Man City, I mean, are they playing a very dangerous game by putting all their eggs in a Champions League basket now? Because it seems like they are.
Yeah, I think it was Danny Mills. One of my friends was telling me that Danny Mills had said Man City going to focus on the Champions League this season, and just as my friend said, not if they want to make sure they're in the Champions League next season, because they got bigger problems. They got bigger problems domestically than they do have European. Because you don't expect Man City to turn up in Europe. That's been kind of the paradigm for the past couple of years now, is that Man City aren't ready for Europe yet. The thing you've got to make sure is that you're still there so that you can learn and you can develop the team, especially if Pep's coming in next season. It's much more important that they focus on fourth, and considering they are now fourth and same level points as Manchester United, and West Ham are right behind them, and Stoke, Liverpool, Southampton, even Chelsea could still very easily creep up there. They've got much bigger problems to worry about than Europe this season.
Yeah, I would tend to agree, and I wonder if Man City fans are having the same fallout as Arsenal fans. I somehow doubt it, although of course it's two different paradigms. Tom, what did you make of Liverpool in particular in this game? Because they haven't got a lot to play for other than the Europa League, so arguably you could say that they turned up into this game with the least amount of pressure, and they played like a side that were out to kind of right the wrongs of Sunday. Do you see them maybe making the Europa League places again and pushing on up the league?
Well, they've obviously got the Europa League already with winning. Sorry, I've got that completely mixed up. But they want to be in Europe. But if I was a Liverpool fan, I'd be so disappointed that the result didn't happen at the weekend, and it would be a bit of a hollow victory if I was a Liverpool fan. Obviously, they want to push up the league, but ultimately, they probably felt as a Liverpool fan that the Europa League has hindered them with their domestic form, and they've always been down that. The one season which they really took the league by storm with Brendan Rodgers at the helm and Suarez really firing, and then got into the Champions League. They went out very quickly, and it was a bit of a so-so performances there. But beating City is definitely a statement. That's their second win on the road. They're 3 games unbeaten, so they want to keep the run going. I don't really see them pushing though. They're just so up and down with their form, and they need the right players in the right places and in the right form to perform. It will be tricky for them to get ahead of the likes of Stoke and West Ham, who are just flying at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good result for them either way. I mean, definitely.
It's just a bit of a hollow victory in my opinion because of the weekend.
Yeah.
Something else I'd add to that is Lallana got the opening goal today. Aside from the fact that Joe Hart's save was atrocious, that's 3 and 4 he's now got. And as someone that's seen him for a few years, I know Southampton fans will not be happy to hear me praise him, but I think Jurgen Klopp is going to be the making of Adam Lallana, and starting next season, I think we're going to see him really, really kick on at Liverpool.
Yep, I think that's probably a good shout. If he's
heard it here first,
he certainly needs to improve from what he was previously. So absolutely, let's move on then quickly. Sort of dial back to Tuesday to finish the top of the league talk. Again, Ross, we said that Leicester would face some games where maybe things weren't going to go their way, where they would play teams that would not so much part of the bus, but would offer something different. And of all teams, West Brom kind of part the bus, but also scored 2 goals and came away with a 2-2 draw. So, is this the sort of sign that Leicester is it a point gained given tonight's results, or do you think there's a bigger worry that they've kind of struggled for 2 games?
I think for Leicester, every point is a point gained, because the fact they're still first is mad for neutrals and for Leicester fans. So any point is a good point. I think it's a bigger point for West Brom. And we've said on this pod before that when you get to this end of the season, now points to really do mean prizes. And for West Brom, it was essential they made sure they got something from this, because they got to hit that 40-point mark quickly. I think Craig Gardner essentially dragged the team across the line by himself on Tuesday. But for Leicester fans, they'll probably look at that and say that's a game they probably should have won. But like I say, I still think a draw against a West Brom side that really does need the points is still a pretty good result.
Yeah, absolutely. And given what's happened tonight, I mean, they will be looking at it thinking, they'll either be thinking, oh, if only we'd have won, or they'll be thinking, hey, well, it's another point closer to the title. So it'll be an interesting way of how they move on from this. Let's look at the challenging pack then. Tom, Manchester United got a 1-0 victory over Watford. It took to the 83rd minute when Juan Mata popped up. They've hit a run of form all of a sudden, and they are indeed now level with Manchester City on 47 points, albeit having played a game more. This Manchester derby that's looming, I think it's only a couple of weeks away now. It's going to be quite pivotal, isn't it?
Oh, certainly. I mean, if you would have said a couple of weeks ago about Man United and would they be getting Champions League, you would have been scoffing at the fact that they might be doing that. But as you say, they're now level on points. But tonight's performance, from what I have seen, is that it was back to the more lacklustre, really just trying to score. Watford had plenty of chances and missed. I mean, Odion Carlos now is without a goal in 9 matches in the Premier League, so that's worrying for Watford. But I think that the goal that Mata scored was sublime, the free kick. I'd definitely recommend people go check it out. So it's good that they're getting it formed together for themselves, but that match against Man City will be huge. And to be honest, if I'm being genuinely honest, I think if Man United go and win that, I think that could be a decider in who gets the top 4 for those two.
Yeah, it's certainly all becoming very, what's the phrase, Constantinated? Is that the right phrase, where everything gets together? I think it is, we'll go with that.
Concentrated?
One of the two, concentrate.
I think it's goal difference as well that's going to be very, very big in the fight for City versus United.
Yeah.
In terms of who's going to finish higher, because United just have not scored enough, and Man City will certainly put 3 or 4 goals past a random team at some point this season, I'm sure.
Yeah, currently Arsenal plus 16, Manchester City plus 17, United and West Ham both plus 11. So it doesn't sound like a lot, but 5 or 6 goals is quite a lot over a period of time. So that could be key. You're absolutely right. Another team I just want to ask you about, Ross, quickly. Stoke City. Now, this result has kind of effects at both ends of the table. Stoke, albeit very much outsiders to make the top 6 now, but they are only 4 points behind West Ham. They got a 1-0 victory over Newcastle United, a late Xherdan Shaqiri goal. Where does this leave Newcastle? They've been away for a long period of time. I think they've been in Dubai. They now drop back into the relegation zone tonight. So let's focus on Newcastle first of all. Is this the sort of game they would have looked at and thought they could have got something from, or is this one of the ones they'll put down to, well, we didn't expect much anyway?
I think you have to look at Stoke City as a team you can get something from if you're Newcastle, because much like West Ham, Stoke go through these periods, especially this season, where they've been brilliant and then they're awful. If you're Newcastle, you would have liked to have thought you could get something out of that game. I've seen the goal, Shaqiri's goal. It's not very good goalkeeping, because I can't remember who's in goal for them at the moment, but he doesn't actually move for it. I think he thinks it's going over, but it's a good shot. But from what I know of the game, you would have had it down as a draw, and Newcastle will definitely feel like that's a point lost. I think the other big problem for them is, much like Steve McLaren said in the pre-match presser, that this is the most frustrating team he's ever worked with, because one week they're brilliant and one week they're awful. You've got to try and find a way of marshalling yourself when you're in a relegation fight, and you didn't see that against Stoke tonight. Hopefully you'll see a bit more of them from it on the weekend. Yeah,
absolutely. And Stoke, just quick word for them. I mean, they had a period of form where they did struggle for a couple of weeks, and they had a couple of losses. They've come back with 3 straight victories now. Who they play at the weekend away at Chelsea. That's going to be another big test for them, isn't it, ahead?
Yeah, I mean, they've got a good balance, Stoke. They haven't been as free-flowing as you might expect that front 4 to be, and they haven't been as defensive as you might expect that back 4 to be, but they do have a good balance, and they can turn up on any given week and set up however the hell they want. So I think they'll be in for a tough game against Chelsea, but I think Chelsea will still look at it as an equally tough game.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's turn our attentions then to the bottom end. Tom, I think it's fair to say we all expect that Aston Villa are gone. They lost at home to Everton by 3-1. So we'll just gloss over that very briefly. Finis Murray, Lennon and Lukaku with goals. Just with the sole reply. It does appear, even though Remy Gard, bless him, is putting on a very straight face about it and saying that, maybe a brave face, I should say, that we can still stay up mathematically. I think they're gone. So let's look at the teams that are in and around there. Norwich. Now, they lost at home to Chelsea. fair to say that going behind inside a minute is not a good start at home, is it, when you need points?
No, certainly not. It was a great goal as well. I saw it. But it's just one of those games, it's the cliche in football where if you go behind that early, the plan goes straight out the window, and really you're in a state of shock and you don't really know where to come back. And they didn't do too bad. Obviously, they went 2-0 behind with Costa scoring, but then they got it back through Redmond, and you thought that they might be putting Chelsea on the rails a bit, but they still never really sort of took the chance with both hands, and it was more of a stuttered to a 2-1 victory for Chelsea. But like in terms of Chelsea, they've really picked up form now, and it's quite impressive to see them move up to 10th. I mean, as Arsenal fans, we were discussing how worrying it is that they've now gone five games undefeated with the 3 games. The last one's winning, so it's a bit worrying moving up the table for us. But for Chelsea fans, I'm sure they'll be delighted considering their first half of the season form.
Absolutely, and a good result for Chelsea, has to be said. They're on quite the run at the moment. Russ, what about Sunderland? Now, they had a game which, obviously, the Pardew effect with Crystal Palace, it just started recently. You've started to see his mask slip a little bit, or Big Pards, as we all know. He's got Connor Wickham scoring goals, and he got another 2 away at Sunderland. But that goal from Fabio Borini, which some people are saying was a mark of genius, I think it was a mishit cross myself. But who does this favour more, this result? Sunderland with the bounce of a last-minute equaliser, or Palace with the knowledge that they've got a point away from home at 2-2?
As a supporter of a side that have Sunderland on the weekend, I hope it's a bigger result for Palace. If I'm honest, I think it's probably a bigger result for Sunderland because, as I was saying earlier, points mean prizes now. Every point is huge. For Palace, I don't think anyone will be happy with a point because they know they need to win to turn around this horrific form they're on at the moment. Sunderland will see that as a good step forward, especially since Norwich and Newcastle both lost. But I think for Crystal Palace, that's probably still as concerning as the other results they've had recently.
Yeah, you do get the feeling that 2-1 up with a minute to go, Pardew was pretty sick to lose that equaliser. Do you think it was a cross or a shot, by the way?
I haven't seen it, so I couldn't comment.
Do look that one up. Tom, have you seen it?
Yeah, cross.
If it was anyone else other than Fabio Borini, I would say, oh no, it's Borini, and I'm just not sure. Well worth a look, Ross, definitely, to see what you think.
I'm just going to watch it now.
Breaking news.
Oh yeah, no. You don't do that deliberately, do you? He's drilling that across the middle, so Defoe can run onto it. Somebody will get on it.
Yeah, diving header at the back post kind of cross. That's what I thought. Yeah.
It's not as good as Shaqiri's early in the season, I must say. That was a better miss-hit cross.
Yeah, there you go. But hey, if you're going to be lucky in that way. I guess that's the way you got to look at it. So. Fair enough. Okay, I think that covers all of the games, doesn't it? I just want to quickly nip back to Aston Villa again briefly, Ross, because I know this is a subject that you've covered sort of at depth, shall we say, in the past previous pods that we've done. Do you think that the more and more the weeks go past, do you suspect that Remy Gard might start either looking at his future, or do you think he might start playing some of these younger players that you mentioned sort of on the previous pods? Because obviously there was a mathematical chance they could stay up, and there still is technically, but we all know they're going down. They're away at Manchester City on Saturday. Do you think there's any chance they might start playing the kids now?
I think he's probably got to start doing both, thinking about his future and playing the kids. But I suspect it's got to start with playing the kids. If he plays the youngsters and he sees that there's hope there and there's something to build there, then there's no reason realistically for him to move, because relegation will be a nice cleansing movement for Aston Villa where Remy Gard can move players in and out and decide who he wants and who he doesn't. I would be stunned if I had a conversation with Remy Gard today and he told me he wasn't genuinely considering his future because of how badly he was sold down the river about finances, how bad the team has been, how little they seem to be reacting to his team talks. He said this week in his pre-match presser that he would only pick players that looked like they thought they could stay up. And I don't think there are any players at Aston Villa that think they'll stay up. So he's got a really rough job, probably a tougher job than he thought he was ever going to have. I would be astounded to know that he hasn't been thinking about his future.
It's a real mess, that club, isn't it? A lot of supporters left early and abandoned the club, and it's a real state of affairs, that really is. Let's run through the fixtures for the weekend ahead before we've got a couple of quick questions.
Are we skipping over the El Clasicost.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do you know what? I left it out for a reason. I've taken it off my list, and I left it out because I was going to come to you last, and I completely forgot about it. So, no, go for gold. Bournemouth 2, Southampton 0. You see, you could have got away with that. I could have just...
Yeah, I could have, but I'm thinking of the fans.
Thinking of the fans. Okay, so you said that you saw this as a test, that it would be tough, and you expected Southampton to go there with purpose. It didn't really work out like that, though, did it?
No, that was as bad as we've been since Midtjylland in the Europa League. It was absolutely awful. And I know before we started recording this pod, you said to me that I could join in with your moping. I was actually quite happy with 2-0 because it could have been so much worse. Bournemouth wanted it much more than we did from the first minute to the last, and the team performed worse than any game during that 10-game run we went on over the winter. We were absolutely awful. And Jose Font came out after the game and said, much like he did after the Midtjylland tie, that we need a big response, we need to turn things around on the weekend, and that the players are determined to do this, that and the other. So Sunderland is now a big, big game for us. We absolutely have to turn things around because it was unforgivable how bad we were in a game that, although Southampton fans don't see it as a big rivalry, we barely even see it as a rivalry, it's never nice to lose to a local side, especially one that will rub it in your face like Bournemouth will. So it's a bad result, but personally, I'm okay with 2-0 because, like I say, it could have and should have been worse.
Absolutely. And just quickly touching on Bournemouth, it would be unfair not to give them some credit, I suppose. I mean, they're 32 points now, which is a full, 12, how many points is that clear? 8 points clear?
8.
So, do you think that's them safe? Particularly Swansea winning again tonight as well. They're up to 30 points. Oh, God. Do you think that it is now a four-way battle for 3 spots at the bottom, or do you still expect somebody to fall?
I don't count anyone out because Crystal Palace are still in danger of it. Bournemouth are still in danger of it simply because they're in that zone, but I think they've got enough because I was really impressed with them on Tuesday night, and across the season I've really enjoyed watching them as well. I don't think Swansea are safe. I think the victory over Arsenal was a bit of a false dawn because they haven't been good enough for most of the season, and I don't think the new manager has got them firing as well as he would have liked. So I think the top 4 will probably be the main battle, but never count anyone else out in this relegation fight.
No, vital 3 points. Home games going to be very, very key for Bournemouth, one suspects. We will run through the fixtures for Saturday then, and we'll touch on the table as well. So on Saturday, Tottenham Arsenal, probably the biggest North. Well, we say that, is it now? I don't know. It could be one of the biggest or one of the worst, but it is indeed the North London derby that kicks off the weekend.
I would say that Tottenham versus Arsenal is the biggest game that Leicester City have never played in.
That's a very, very good quote. I like that. Yeah, very, very true. And
that could really, really decide things for Leicester, whether or not they genuinely believe that they're in this. If that ends in a draw, then Leicester fans will be licking their lips at that.
Or arguably an Arsenal win. Arguably, I mean, Leicester would look at that and say, well, if Arsenal win, we're still 4 points clear of both, and we've got a game in hand. So, arguably, but yeah, let's try and think about an Arsenal win because it's hard to comprehend right now for me personally. One thing's for sure, that'll either make or break my weekend, so I look forward to that. 3 o'clock kickoffs. Then we got Manchester City, Aston Villa. We got Newcastle, Bournemouth, Swansea, Norwich, Chelsea, Stoke, Southampton, Sunderland, as you mentioned. There are Everton, West Ham. And the evening game is indeed Leicester away at Watford, which is a test in itself. And then on the Sunday, we've got Crystal Palace host Liverpool, massive game that for Palace, you'd think. And West Brom host Manchester United. So some fixtures that don't always leap off the page, but a lot that have quite significant things at stake, I should say. I mean, Swansea-Norwich is one that really leaps off at me. Tom, do you think if Norwich lose that, that's potentially them doomed? Because there's 2 sides right down there that both need these points.
Potentially. Obviously, if Swansea were to win that, it would open up such a gap. But at the end of the day, it's the 3 teams, Sunderland, Norwich and Newcastle, that really could go all the way down to the wire. So although a loss would be really horrific for Norwich, I think that they're completely not out of being safe at all, just because of the form of the other 2 as well.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And Russ, with the Palace-Liverpool game, Liverpool finding some form. If Palace don't win that, is that where your fears start to sort of creep in, that they're back in this relegation issue?
If they don't win that and someone like Bournemouth or Swansea do win, then absolutely, because I firmly believe that Swansea and Bournemouth are still in this relegation fight, even though I think Bournemouth will be safe. If Crystal Palace move beneath them, then they're in real trouble.
I agree. And finally, if Manchester City win, I'll stick with you, Ross. If Manchester City win against Aston Villa, which you would pretty much put your house, your brother's house, mother's house, whole family's houses on, to be perfectly honest, so you know what'll happen now. Villa will go there and win. But if Man City do win that game, does that heap the pressure on Manchester United to go to suddenly an in-form West Brom on Sunday and get a victory?
I'm not entirely sure that Manchester United will feel all that much pressure personally, because I think it would be nice for them to get above Man City. But considering how their season has been, I wouldn't be surprised if Man City winning and Manchester United not winning. I wouldn't be surprised if Man United fans wouldn't be all that bothered by it, because I think they kind of know their position at the moment is around fifth. If Man City lose or draw, then they'll be right up for it. But if they win, I don't think it'll mean too much to them personally.
No, they've got a very big month coming up in late March, early April. They play Liverpool, the second leg of the Europa tie against Liverpool, followed by the Manchester derby, followed by Everton, followed by Spurs away. It's quite a run of 4 fixtures all of a sudden for them. So interesting to see where they are. Let's look at the table then after the midweek results. So Leicester City will be indeed licking their lips despite a couple of sort of patchy results. Suddenly they've extended their lead of all things. They got 57 points from their 28 played, which is a goal difference of plus 20, so they are top. Spurs are second, despite their loss tonight at West Ham. 28 games, 54 points. Arsenal third place, 51 points, 16 plus 16 goal difference. So Spurs' goal difference is plus 27, so that might come into reckoning maybe. But Arsenal still technically in the race, but 6 points adrift to the list of the leaders, if I can put my teeth in. The two Manchester clubs are locked together in 4th and 5th respectively, both on 47 points now. Man City's goal difference slightly better. They do have a game in hand. West Ham make up the top 6 on 46 points as well. And then Stoke, Liverpool, Southampton, Chelsea are the top 10. And then moving down the table, Everton, Watford, West Brom and Palace are 11th, 12th, 13th and 14th respectively. And then you've got that sort of rush at the bottom end of the relegation places. Bournemouth in 15th on 32, Swansea 16th on 30, Sunderland with their point away at Palace staying just above the line with a goal difference marginally better, 24 points. Also on 24 points are Norwich and Newcastle, who are in the drop zone. Newcastle do have a game in hand, of course, and then rock bottom Aston Villa, who, I think it's fair to say are doomed. 16 points from 28 played. So that's where we stand as far as that goes. Before we take a couple of quick questions, Ross, there was a championship game played yesterday, Tuesday, whenever you listen to this. We'll say Tuesday, because that's when it was played. In fact, actually, it was a game on Monday as well, which you can touch on if you like, because Brighton put Leeds to the sword, and then Middlesbrough came off the rails at Blackburn on the Tuesday. So what do you make of those two results?
Yeah, I think 4-0 for Brighton is a bit of a shocker, especially doing it in 38 minutes. Because although I loathe Steve Evans, generally speaking, his teams set up well and defend well, but to concede 4 in 38 minutes is absolute insanity. A lot of stories going around that Steve Evans is now going to get the sack because they haven't won in, I think it's 11 games now. Wow. And we know what their chairman is like. Yep. So it wouldn't shock me to see him go. But as far as I'm aware, he's still in the job. The chairman did tell him not to take any interviews after the games. So it'd be interesting to see what he says in his pre-match presser for the next game. The Tuesday game was Blackburn 2, Middlesbrough 1, which is a result I didn't see coming simply because Blackburn have been so poor offensively this season. I expected them to keep a clean sheet, actually. I thought it was going to be a dull 0-0, but this is why I love the Championship. It ends up 2-1 to Blackburn. That's a really, really, really bad result for Middlesbrough. That's a game they would have eyed at least a point from. So, also Danny Graham got a goal for Blackburn Rovers, which is quite a surprise. And Gaston Ramirez got an assist for Middlesbrough. That's a crazy game. In terms of the top 3, that's a huge result for all of the teams involved in the race, especially for Brighton now, I should say, because after that 4-0 win, they are now back to within a point of Middlesbrough. So it's getting much tighter at the top now.
Certainly is, yeah. So as you say, that result for Borough, I fully expected them to go and win against a side that's still sort of, I think Paul Lambert's still trying to find the right formula at Blackburn, but the results like this will certainly help that. So big weekend ahead in the Championship. Are there any games in particular that stand out for you this coming weekend?
God, let's have a quick breeze through. I mean, there's a good one on Friday, which I expect to be a really good affair, which is Middlesbrough versus Wolves. Middlesbrough have played on Tuesday, though they'll be playing again on Friday, so I don't expect them to be in the best of moods. And Wolves have just got a very big win over Derby, so that could be a potential upset there. Otherwise, having a quick flick through, I mean, Burnley versus Blackburn suddenly becomes very interesting. Derby have a potential slip up against Huddersfield, and they really can't afford too many of those. The one I would pick out from the quick look I'm having now would be Preston North End versus Brighton, because aside from the loss they picked up on the weekend, Preston have been in fantastic form in recent weeks. And who's it again? They're playing Brighton and Hove. Just said their names, I'd already forgotten it. Brighton, for all the good they've done in that game against Leeds, they are still wobbly and they still have the potential to slip. So that's a big game, another potential upset there.
Absolutely. And just quickly, Tom, somebody close to you or close in your life is a follower of the Addicts in Charlton. Yaya Sonogo got into Team of the Week on FIFA and all sorts. I mean, whatever next? Do you give them any hope at all of staying up, or is she kind of accepted the inevitable as well?
I really hope she's not listening to this, because I'm going to say no. Honestly, I really feel for Charlton fans, like with what's going on with the ownership, and like she literally texts me all the time saying, "This is my girlfriend for the listeners I'm talking about. Is a massive Charlton fan." Like, oh, effing and blinded, I hate our owner, and honestly, I really feel for her, because their form is absolutely horrific. And even when they score 3 goals at home, scored by the one and only Yaya Sanogo, they still can't win. So to score 3 and concede 4 at home is unbelievable, really, if you think about it. So it's unfortunate, but I think they're condemned to League One, which would be really harsh if Gillingham go up from League One as well. That would be awful for Charlton fans.
Yeah,
and Millwall as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a real shame for a club like Charlton, proper family club. But hey ho, we will keep an eye. You never know. We're going to finish with 2 quick questions, which we've had from our listeners. I apologise, listeners, if you wanted to get a question, we didn't give you much chance. We've had quite a busy evening, I think it's fair to say. So I didn't get to tweet until late. But you know the drill at the FH Podcast. If there's anything you want to ask us, best thing to do is just say, just hashtag it with English Breakfast, and we know which pod it's for. So get them in early, and we will do our best to answer them. But we've had 2, and they're both from Peter Cech fans, I think it's fair to say. Our good friend at Checky Nando's lad, first of all. I'll give this one to you, Ross. 75 points is the lowest points tally of any it's the lowest points tally to have won the league. Will this season's winners get less points, in your opinion?
God, very good question. It wouldn't surprise me. I wouldn't put my house on it just yet, but it certainly wouldn't surprise me, because this league is so tight this season. If Leicester win it, then yes, I think it's going to be beneath 75. But it's very hard to tell, especially with so many teams in all positions of the league now going to be fighting for every single point, because the league is so congested that even teams like Everton are still thinking the possibility of Europe. So they're going to be fighting for every single point. Every single team in this division thinks that there's something to play for, except perhaps Aston Villa. So yeah, I mean, I would stick with, if Leicester win it, absolutely it will be beneath 75, but I wouldn't bet my house on it just yet.
Fair enough. Very good question. I totally agree with you. And speaking of very good questions, the other question we had tonight was also a very good one at Checkholic. Tom, I'll ask you this one. Would you prefer every Premier League season to be as competitive as the one we're currently in, than a 2-team race every season, or 1 team so far away?
It's difficult to say, simply because of what the situation is this year. If I'm looking at it from a one club fan, I'd say that I'd rather it was just the team that I support competing, making it easier for us to win the league. However, if a neutral, I guess you want to see as many teams compete as possible. What I will say is that in terms of European standings for the league, a team like Leicester coming up and competing like that is really not good in terms of coefficients and what they like. But to be fair, that could be unfair on them to say that they won't compete in Europe if they get into it. So, but I think it's good for TV and stuff like that, seeing a team like Leicester and it being so competitive. But in terms of fans of the bigger teams in the league, I think it's quite embarrassing in some ways and a bit demoralising.
Yeah, it's definitely been a different league this year. And I was listening to Radio 5 the other night, and I think they were saying that it potentially puts a lot of very high-profile managers in the spotlight if Leicester are to go on and do this, because certainly the club we follow, Tom, but not just Arsenal. There's plenty of other clubs that will now look at, you know, even Liverpool, for example, a club, and they'll say, well, hang on a minute, you know, we've had all these managers, and the team has just come out of nowhere and done it on this budget. So I think,
of course, the other caveat is this ridiculous European Super League that's always mooted. If that ever comes off, which I don't expect it to, then that guarantees that the league is going to be as competitive as it is this season, I think.
Absolutely. And of course you've got all the new money coming in. You do wonder if certain chairmen are going to look at the Leicester model and think, you know what, we don't actually need to spend billions to make a successful team. We've just got to get the right people in to find these players. It does make you wonder. And speaking of which, of course, Everton have got new investments, so there'll be another team that will be looking to make the break into that top echelon of teams. We shall see. Right, well, that pretty much does it for us tonight. Just a quick shortened show for all of our loyal listeners, just to sort of keep you abreast of the midweek action. There was plenty of midweek action elsewhere across Europe, so we will be briefly across that in our Monday pod, because, of course, we'll have all the weekend's action to catch up on as well. But a number of quite surprising results in Europe, I think it's fair to say, none less than Bayern Munich losing to Mainz at home this evening. And, of course, it's a Bayern Munich against Borussia Dortmund on Saturday night as well, so I'm sure Drew will be across that. Tom, I'm sure there'll be plenty of La Liga action to catch up on. Is there a game that...
Plenty.
Yes, and there was... Just remind the listeners what game you picked out to look at this week ahead of the weekend's fixtures.
Oh, you caught me at a glance there, but I definitely said go watch Bilbao, and they certainly delivered tonight. So with Adarif getting a hat-trick, so certainly one to be looking out for in terms of getting his Euro place. But
Gary Neville got another win, didn't he? I thought as well, I think.
Oh yeah, winning at Malaga, so that is a huge result for them as well. So all good times for Gary Neville, for G-Nev.
Absolutely. Yep, and of course the mighty Lorient. Hey, they're in the semi-finals and they play PSG. Oh well, never mind. So yes, as usual on the main pod on Monday, we'll go through all the European action across the top 4 leagues and much, much more. We'll have a Hipsters Choice Team of the Week and all that jazz. And Ross, you'll be back with me on Sunday. I think it's me, you and Danny again, from memory. So we'll be back to go through all the English games. And you'll be pleased to know that a few people have said they definitely have an interest in you and I sitting down to talk some Championship one night. So there you go. There are fans of the Championship out there, and
be kind on Charlton, or I'll set the missus on you.
I haven't been in the past couple of weeks. So.
We will arrange that at some point. We'll get that set up for the next couple of weeks. So look out for that. But that's it from us. Thank you very much for joining us. Thanks to Tom for stepping in last minute.
No problem at all.
Thank you to Ross as usual for joining me, sir.
Pleasure.
And yes, enjoy your breakfast, dinners, teas. If you're an Arsenal, digestives, grapefruits. Jaffa cakes. If you're an Arsenal fan, please don't do anything silly. We're all in this together, and we're all football hipsters together. So keep your beard strong and your glasses trendy, and we'll speak to you on the breakfast show on the weekend, and indeed the main pod on Monday.
It's Bergkamp. That's magnificent.
Vivian Foet, Sinclair's cross over Cunningham. Di Canio! Oh, I do not believe that. That is sensational.
Tissier. He's going for goal again. Oh! Only Matthew Le Tissier can score goals like that.